She's kind but not going anywhere big, my dad said, gesturing to my daughter. Not like her cousin. I smiled and said, good to know. Then her cousin won't need my monthly tuition payments. My sister's fork dropped. I didn't wait. I just logged into my bank and... She's kind but not going anywhere big, my dad said, nodding toward Lily like she was someone else's kid and not his own granddaughter. Not like her cousin. Rachel didn't even flinch. She just kept cutting her salmon, smug as ever. I smiled, leaned back in my chair and said, good to know. Then her cousin won't need my monthly tuition payments. The silence hit like a brick. Rachel's fork slipped right out of her hand and clattered against the plate. She blinked at me like I'd just spoken in tongues. Dad finally looked up from his food, mouth slightly open, and I could tell he hadn't expected a response, let alone that one. I didn't wait. I pulled out my phone, opened the bank app and scrolled to the saved transfers. I found the one labeled Ava College Fund, $1,200 on the first of every month. I clicked cancel. It asked me to confirm. I did. Done. Rachel leaned across the table. Emma, that money helps Ava. She has nothing to do with what Dad says. You're right, I said. She's got nothing to do with it. So let you pay for it. Are you serious? She asked, voice rising. He compared my daughter to yours, I said. Again. Right to her face. And you sat there and let him. Dad finally jumped in. Oh, come on, Emma. Don't be dramatic. I'm just saying the truth. Lily's not academic. She's 11, I said. And not your project. Or your punching bag. Rachel looked at him, then at me. You said you wanted to help with Ava's tuition. No one begged you. Don't punish her because you're insecure about your own kid. That hit hard. She knew it would. I stood up. I'm not punishing anyone. I'm just done funding your daughter's future while mine gets treated like a second-class citizen at every dinner table. Dad scoffed. So you're going to throw a tantrum and pull the plug like a fool? I looked at him. You want her to go to college? You pay for it. He waved a hand like it was no big deal. Fine. I'll cover it myself. Unlike you, I'm not a quitter. I smiled. Let's see how long you can manage. The table went dead quiet. Later that night as we were leaving, my husband looked at me in the car and said, You sure? I nodded. I've let them do this for years. It ends now. But it didn't really end there. That moment, it was just the crack in the glass. The shattering was still to come. The next morning my sister called 4 times. I let each one go to voicemail. Then came the texts. First the passive-aggressive ones. Ava's crying. She doesn't understand what she did wrong. Then the guilt trips. She looks up to you. She doesn't even know this is about money. And finally the real one. Dad's furious. Just call him and fix this. I didn't. Instead I made coffee, sat by the window and watched Lily brush paint onto a canvas. She was working on a seascape, completely unaware of the storm brewing outside our quiet little house. I realized in that moment that I'd been shielding her from a lot more than just a comparison. I'd been absorbing years of comments, glances, and little nods that added up to something ugly. 2 days later I got the call. Not from Rachel. From Dad. Unbelievable, he said. You're just going to cut your niece off over some harmless comment? You've said it 100 times, I told him. The difference is this time I answered. He laughed, sharp and bitter. You'll regret this. You don't walk out on family. Not over some brat's painting and your feelings. That word, brat, set something off in me I didn't even know I'd been holding back. I'm done, Dad. Don't call me unless it's about something that actually matters. Fine, he snapped. Then I'll handle Ava's tuition myself. Won't be the first time I've had to step up when you failed. I hung up. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I sat down and made a list. At the top, talk to Jason about Dad and the company. See, what Dad seemed to forget in his little ego explosion was that the business he bragged about, the one he used to hold over all our heads, wasn't fully his anymore. A few years back when his health started to slip, Jason and I stepped in. We reorganized the finances, brought in new contracts and eventually bought a controlling share. We hadn't needed to interfere with Dad's role. He'll know. When Jason got home that night I handed him the list. He read it silently. You sure? I'm not letting him have power over anything I care about. Not my daughter. Not my money. Not our business. Jason nodded. Then we'll handle it. The next morning Jason made the call. Professional, polite, firm. He told Dad he was being removed from any operational decisions at the company effective immediately. Legal had already drafted the paperwork. Dad showed up at our office by noon. He didn't knock. Just stormed in shouting. Jason stood in front of me before Dad even made it across the room. "You little traitors," Dad said. "You think you can cut me out of my own company? It's not yours anymore," I said. "You sold the majority. We warned you." He stepped toward me fast. For a second I thought he was going to hit me. Actually raise a hand. But Jason caught his arm mid-swing and said, "Don't even try it." The room went quiet. No one moved. No one blinked. Dad stared at me for a long time, then turned and walked out. That was the last time he ever set foot in the building. And just like that, the balance of power shifted. But the fallout? That was still coming. By the next week it was everywhere. First in whispers among the employees. Then in phone calls from old friends of Dad's. Ones he used to name drop at every holiday dinner. Word had gotten out that he'd been removed from his own company. And people wanted to know why. I didn't owe them an explanation, so I gave none. Jason stayed quiet too. But Dad didn't. He started calling people, investors, vendors, mutual friends, spinning his version of the story. Claimed we'd schemed our way into power, that I'd turned on my own blood. One of his oldest clients even called me directly, trying to get the real story. I told her politely that the business was stable and moving forward, and that personal matters weren't up for discussion. That same night I got a text from Rachel. "You've embarrassed him. He's humiliated." I stared at the message. There was no "I'm sorry" in it. No "I understand." Just blame again for someone else's behavior. I didn't respond. A week later I heard Dad had tried to take out a loan. For tuition. It was denied. Turns out over the years he'd been burning through more money than any of us realized. Multiple refinances on his house, quiet loans, even some shady investments I'd never heard about. He didn't have the savings he always bragged about. Just debt. Rachel called again. This time she was crying. "You've got to help. Ava doesn't know what's going on, but he told her he'd cover school. She's already registered. We can't afford it without him." "You can take out a loan," I said. "We won't get approved for the full amount. You know that. You make more than we do. That's not my problem anymore. You're punishing us because Dad's awful to you." "No," I said. "I'm finally done pretending he's not." She went quiet for a long time. Then the final blow. "Mom would be ashamed of you." I hung up. And that's when I finally cried. Not for Ava. Not even for Rachel. But for my mother, who had died 5 years earlier. The only person who ever told Dad to sit down and shut up when he crossed the line. She used to say he had a sharp tongue and a paper wallet. I didn't understand what she meant until now. 2 days after that call, Jason showed me the numbers. The business was thriving. We'd signed a new client that Dad had once said we'd never land without him. Our margins were the highest they'd ever been. Everything was working without his interference. And then the news came from a mutual friend. Dad had quietly put his house up for sale. That wasn't the part that surprised me. It was what he told people. That I had stolen everything. That his daughter had betrayed him and left him with nothing. He didn't mention the years of comments about Lily. He didn't talk about the dinners where he pitted cousins against each other. He definitely didn't talk about the time he tried to swing at his own daughter in an office hallway. But it didn't matter anymore. The truth had a way of sticking around. And his version of things was starting to unravel faster than he could patch it up. The cracks were growing. And I wasn't done yet. The house sold fast. Too fast. A cash buyer, someone who probably didn't care about the history, the neighborhood, or the fact that the man living there had once built a family inside those walls. And then slowly tore it down. He got less than it was worth. Jason said the listing price was a red flag right away. A sign of desperation. We didn't say anything to Lily. She never asked about her grandfather. It was like he'd just faded out of her life. Kids are smarter than we give them credit for. One night Jason and I were sitting on the back porch when we got the email. It was from Dad. No subject line. Just a few lines of text. "Tell your husband I hope he enjoys what he stole. You'll both choke on it eventually. One day your daughter will see what kind of person you really are." Jason read it, then closed his laptop and didn't say a word. Neither did I. We didn't respond. I could have taken it to court. There were legal threats implied in those words, and he still held a minor stake in one of the smaller divisions. I was tired. And I knew him. He'd bark louder when no one barked back. So I stayed silent. Rachel called a few days later. I thought maybe she was going to apologize. Instead, she asked if we could meet. I agreed. Public place. Neutral ground. We sat across from each other at a cafe near my office. She looked worn down, makeup trying to hide the lack of sleep, smile tight like it hurt to use. I didn't come to fight, she said. I just don't understand how we got here. You stood by while he trashed my daughter for years, I said. Every time you stayed silent, you agreed with him. I didn't agree. I just didn't want to make it worse. But you let me carry it all. And still asked me to pay for Ava's life like it was separate from everything else. She didn't argue. Just stared at the cup in her hands. He's living in a condo now, she finally said. Small. Far from here. He barely talks to anyone. It's like he's trying to disappear. He used to act like he was untouchable. He's not anymore. She paused. He asked me to ask you if you'd consider helping him. He says he's broke. Actually laughed. Rachel didn't. You know I'm not going to, I said. I figured, she said. I told him not to ask. We sat there in silence. Then she reached into her purse and pulled out a letter. He wrote this. For Lily. I didn't take it. You can keep it, I said. She doesn't need words from someone who couldn't speak kindness to her face. Rachel nodded, tucked it back in her bag and stood up. Don't worry. I'm not asking you for anything else, she said. She started to walk away then stopped. You were right, she added. About all of it. And then she left. I sat there for a long time after. Thought about how long I had tried to earn a version of love that came with conditions. And how freeing it felt to stop. But I wasn't done yet. Not quite. A few weeks passed. I didn't hear from Dad. Didn't hear from Rachel either. What I did hear was from Ava, my niece. She emailed me. Not her mom. Not her grandfather. Just her directly. He kept it short, almost formal. Hi Aunt Emma. I just wanted to say thank you for helping me for as long as you did. I don't know everything that happened, but I hope one day we can talk. I miss Lily. Caught me off guard. I hadn't expected it. Ava had always been quiet at family things, never caught in the middle of the drama. But she was smart, she had to know some of it. The tension. The favoritism. The fact that she went to school every month thanks to the aunt whose daughter was always made to feel less than. I replied. Thank you, Ava. You didn't do anything wrong. Lily misses you too. If you ever want to visit, the door's open. No mention of her mom. Or of my dad. I wanted her to know the bridge to her wasn't burned. A week later she came. Alone. She brought Lily a notebook with thick paper for painting and sat with us on the deck for hours. They caught up like no time had passed. I watched them, something tight in my chest finally starting to ease. Before she left, she said, he was wrong about her, you know. I looked at her. She didn't mean Rachel. He meant Dad. I know, I said. I just waited too long to say it out loud. She nodded. Then hugged me. Later that night, Jason came to me with news. Something unexpected. We got an offer, he said. For the company. Full buyout. Coastal firm. Big money. I blinked. And you're considering it? Only if you are. It took less than a day to decide. We sold it. Everything. The office, the name, the entire structure. Clean exit with the kind of number most people only dream of seeing once in their lives. And when it cleared, we bought a house 4 states away, near the coast, on a hill where you could see the ocean from every window. Lily got a studio space upstairs with light pouring in all day. We left quietly. No farewell dinner, no announcement. Just boxes packed and a new address no one had except Ava. The last thing I heard about my dad came months later. He had tried to open a consulting firm, the same one he used to talk about starting for years. It never launched. Something about a denied business loan, and the rest of his retirement savings frozen due to tax issues he'd ignored. Rachel eventually moved to smaller place closer to her work. She never reached out again. Sometimes I wonder if Dad ever drives past the office building that no longer has his name on the door. Or if he thinks about the granddaughter he underestimated. Probably not. Some people live in a world where they are always the victim. Always the one who got taken down. But not me. I lived in it too long. I know how to get out. The first morning in the new house, Lily woke up before either of us and opened every curtain in the place. Sunlight poured into the kitchen, and the smell of salt came through the open screen door. She didn't say anything, just pointed to the horizon where the water met the sky and smiled like she already belonged here. We hadn't unpacked everything yet, but none of us cared. Jason made coffee. I sat at the table barefoot, watching my daughter walk out onto the deck with a blank canvas under her arm. She'd found her peace quicker than I had, maybe because she hadn't been carrying as much weight. My father's, my sister's. The years of comments, expectations, subtle digs. The hierarchy that somehow always put Lily at the bottom while asking me to keep paying the price. Gone now. Jason handed me a mug. So, he said, what are you going to do with no business, no office, and no one to fight with? I smiled. Paint. Sleep. Maybe build something of my own. Something quiet. Sounds dangerous, he said. That night I wrote 2 letters. One to Ava, telling her she was always welcome and not just as a niece but as her own person. I told her I hoped she kept building her own life far away from the weight of other people's opinions. I told her Lily missed her and that she should visit if she ever needed to get away. The second letter was shorter. I didn't plan to send it. It was to my father. I told him I forgave him. Not because he deserved it but because I deserved to be done. I didn't want to carry around a man who chose pride over love. Who looked at a child and saw competition. Who treated daughters like tools and granddaughters like trophies. Or disappointments. I folded the letter and tucked it into a drawer. Maybe one day I'd burn it. Or maybe it would stay there forever. It didn't matter. I had nothing left to say. Lily ended up submitting one of her paintings to a local gallery a few months later. It was accepted. They even asked her if she had more. I watched as she stood in the gallery during opening night, talking to strangers about her work like she'd done it 100 times before. Someone asked where she learned to paint like that. She just said, I was given time and space. That's all anyone really needs. And I knew then, completely and fully, that I'd done the right thing. Because my daughter wasn't going somewhere big.